Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming down tonight to the Chamber of Commerce's Meet the Candidate evening. This evening is jointly held with the Bowling Club, so I'd like to thank the Bowling Club management and board for allowing us to use the dining room. If you're not a member of the Bowling Club, you should be a member of the Bowling Club. It's $11 for the membership, and you probably would have got a discount on your meal and also a discount on your drink. So it's a very worthy club to join. Oh, sorry, yeah, that's right, thank you for that. We've got a new member here. If you're joining tonight, it's $5.50 because half the year's already gone, so it's a great value. And they will remind you automatically in June. Tonight's, we've got 3 candidates, and just to answer a couple of questions in case anybody's wondering, the reason why we've chosen the 3 candidates is that we believe that these 3 candidates have got the strongest business portfolio, and they're the people we want to listen to. The other 3 candidates are very topical, so we want to be very focused. I know there's some community members here, but certainly if you want to listen to anybody else who's participating in the by-election, they've got a candidate sausage sizzle going on tomorrow in Coomera at 9 o'clock, and also the New South Wales Farmers have got a webinar for the candidates as well. So it's not as if you're being deprived, or people are being deprived of their democratic right to listen to what's happening in the by-election. We've drawn straws. Nicole will talk first, then Catherine. No, sorry, Nicole first, then Bryce, then Catherine. Each candidate will have 3 to 5 minutes to talk about themselves, because that's really important, I believe, is to understand who the person is, but then also to articulate what they stand for and their policy stands for. We've got 13 questions to ask. They'll each be given 60 seconds to answer it. I'm a little bit liberal on the 60 second, depending on how good the first 60 second is. If it gets pretty boring of an answer, then we'll make sure the alarm goes off and then go on to the next question. At the end of the evening, if there's time allowed and if they're still got the energy, because these guys have been on the road now for, oh, here he goes, he's going to be fine. We'll ask questions from the floor. Clear on the rules? Clean sweep, clean cuts. No dirty slots. These questions, by the way, came from an amalgamated group of people in community and also in business. They cover a pretty good range of topics, so you need to see the answers. The first one, and I'll admit this is my question, topic very dear to the basis Chamber of Commerce, and that's about SAP. Oh, sorry. I want to ask that question. First mistake of the evening.
That's okay, thanks for that. We want the easy bit first, don't we? It's like, please. Now, I'm sorry if I am sounding a little bit hoarse and looking a little bit haggard, but as Olivia has mentioned, it has been, for me, 4 months on the road since I was pre-selected, every single day with the exception of Christmas Day. And this, in fact, is my... Sorry, what?
Shoot out?
I fell asleep on the couch. Shush, don't tell anyone. How's that? Can you then hear that down the back? Is that okay? That's all right? So this is my 6th visit to Jindabyne during that time, and I have travelled over every single area of this 20,000 odd square kilometre electorate during that time, at least a couple of times, to visit everywhere from Adaminimi back to Araluen, and I've endeavoured to be as much across the local issues as I possibly can in that time frame. And I'd like to begin by actually saying that congratulations, of course, to our winter snow sports people who are over there currently in China or who are heading there, and who, of course, many have been training at the National Snow Sport Training Centre that John Barilaro and I had the privilege to open at the end of last year $5.1 million invested in this community, and so tremendous to see some of these athletes competing. Young Tess Cody, of course, winning a bronze the other night as well. So to give you a little bit of background on me, and I will be brief, I've lived in Queanbeyan for 32 years now. I actually grew up in Griffith, New South Wales, and Hay, where my grandparents had a small property on the banks of the Murrumbidgee there on the Hay Plain. I moved to Queanbeyan to attend university, the first member of my extended family to ever do so. My dad had been a truck driver, my mum a trainee nurse. They were very young when I was born. So I moved up to Queanbeyan because I managed to secure myself a job in order to be able to support myself through university. And here I am still as part of this wonderful region. After I did a communications degree at the University of Canberra, I did some of my cadetship on the Tumut and Adelong Times, and what a fantastic experience that was as well. Back in Queanbeyan, I've run small businesses, and then when my husband, some of you may be aware, Tim, was elected to the Queanbeyan Council back in 2004 and became the Mayor in 2008. Also the Mayor of Queanbeyan Palerang, and made the decision after 13 years as Mayor not to run at the end of last year, and decided that it was a good idea for me to continue our family's community service, and so I was happy to put myself forward in that space. We have two grown sons, 24 and 22. During my years as a participant, as an active participant in our communities, I have been very involved for a very long period of time. I'm not a Johnny-come-lately to this. 7 years I was president of Meals on Wheels, and what a great honour that was. I've been the independent chair of Headspace in Queanbeyan. I've been involved with domestic violence and homelessness support services in Queanbeyan as well, and I've also been involved in education services over the border in Canberra. I've been on the board of a Canberra college, and for the last 3 years I've been the chair of that college. In fact, the first is a boys' school and the first female chair in the college's 65-year history. I'm also quite an avid sportswoman, and in my spare time I continue to play soccer, maybe not very well, but I certainly use that as my time out. So that's a little bit about me, and I am happy to discuss more with you as we go on in terms of my view and my vision for the community. I can also let you know that during the last 20 years or so, I went back to journalism. I've been working as a freelance journalist and also author. I've published a couple of books, including one on the social history of Queanbeyan. I've also done quite a lot with Canberra media during that time, and I'm just about to complete, which is I also know a little bit about this area, because I'm just about to complete, and I was hoping to do it before I ventured into politics, because I was looking at it a little further down the track, as we may well all have been, so a bit of a whirlwind for me as well. But I'm just about to complete another book on the World War I hero Ernie Corey, who of course was working in Cooma as a blacksmith striker before taking up the call in World War I, and he was part of the Men from Snowy River March, and had been raised in Numaralla and Niminaville. So over the last 3 years I've spent quite a bit of time down this part of the Monero as well, researching and writing that. So I hope that I'm going to be able to be the first female member for Monero in its 165-year history come this weekend, and I also hope to be able to complete that book soon after that. So that's enough from me for right now. Time on.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and what a beautiful vista to look out to. Between visits, can I say, Russell? But I tried to get my daughter to come down here, and she was much more interested in streaming The Simpsons on Disney+, but she missed the great week. It could have been a good summer experience. Lovely to be back in the room. I'd like to actually acknowledge traditional owners of the land in which we meet tonight. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. And also pay my respects to both past, present and emerging leaders in the area. Also, just a quick acknowledgement, obviously got a Minister of the Crown in the room, the Honourable Ronnie Taylor, so a couple of councillors I see as well, Peter Beer and a few others, John Castellari. So thank you. for coming along. It's an important meeting and it shows... Oh, well, sorry.
Louise.
Apologies if I missed the councillor.
New one.
Louise. Yeah, anyway. So it's a wonderful community. A little bit about myself. I look forward to the questions that are coming. Grew up in Griffith, so just there you go. Who would have thought 2 candidates running for Monero from Griffith? Was a surveyor. Did 5 years surveying on rural properties around Griffith and some town work. After going 2 years to TAFE back in the 90s, when TAFE was a pretty wonderful institution. It's a shame where it is today, but it was pretty good back in the 90s. And then went on, that wasn't quite filling my cup. I wanted to make a difference, so I became a teacher and I taught, retrained in Wagga Wagga, taught in Wagga Wagga, and then had the opportunity to come over to Canberra, to work in Canberra and live in Queanbeyan, and that's what we did. I've worked in government, I've worked at Reconciliation Australia, I've worked as an advisor to federal ministers, something I'm quite proud of. You understand government, being an advisor is about the highest, behind being a minister of course, but it's great to be in those offices and make a difference in those offices. And then I worked at Reconciliation Australia for 3 years, making a difference there, and then back in the department, and then area staffer. So that's my CV. I'm very proud of that CV, and I think it sets me up fantastically. Well, I would say that, wouldn't I? But I do think that, to be a member for Monero. Look, I want to talk a little bit about elections. Enough about me. We are here, remember, this is a by-election. I don't know if you know this, but we're going to vote again in a year's time, and we're here because the member, John Barilaro, resigned over Christmas. So every election matters and every election is important, but by-elections are quite special. They don't change the government, but they allow you to have a say on how the government is going. And that's my frame on this election. So if you're happy with how things are going, and you may well be, some in the room probably give a big tick to the government and they'll vote for them. But if you're not happy with the Premier, and you're not happy with the government, and you think they do need a bit of a shake-up, then you can vote against them on the 12th of February, or in the mail, or at pre-poll. It's quite important, because if they win this by-election, if they win, that will be a massive endorsement. I'll take it as a massive pat on the back. And perhaps some might think, well, good on them. But others might think, you know what, actually, we do need to send them a message, so they get a bit of an understanding that we're not happy about certain decisions that might be happening around town. So by-elections are very, very unique and a great opportunity. They don't change the government. Our leader, Chris Minns, is doing a great job, can I say, has made that quite clear. This is an election, it's a referendum on where they're at. Now, Labor has plenty of positive policies. We've got good environmental policies, we talk about housing affordability. I'm a proud educator, we want to fix TAFE, we want to fix our health system. Plenty of positive things to talk about, and there's also lots of local things to talk about. The SAP, housing affordability locally here. We've seen quadrupling of prices I was having a chat beforehand over the last 8 years. So these are all issues that need to be addressed. But if you want to put a good, hard-working MP into Monero for the next probably 13 months before we then vote again in March 2023, I'm here and I look forward to your questions. Thank you for your time.
Have you already started?
No.
Thanks very much for organising this and including the Greens. It's great to be here, and I'm really excited to be here. It's the first time in a campaign capacity I've been here since 2013 when I was Greens candidate for Monero. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians, the Ngarigo people on whose unceded land we are, and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. And I will keep working to bring about the Truth and Justice Commission so that true healing can begin. I'm Catherine Moore, I'm an artist and writer, and since 1986 I've lived northeast of Braidwood on what is now an amalgamated 2 blocks of 304 acres, 3/4 of which is in a conservation agreement with the state government as of 2019. I'm in a little section of the Currawin Forest fireground that didn't get burnt, and on 3 sides it did, and I was so lucky. For the last couple of years I've not been so much an artist and writer, but I've been a grandmother, and my daughter's a doctor, and so the day, I was, can you stop the clock?
Stop the clock.
Sorry. I can easily get distracted when I'm a bit exhausted. Anyway, so variously I've been in a lockdown in Melbourne, the year before last, and then Canberra last year looking after him, often full time. They left for Brisbane because my daughter got a new job the Tuesday before the election was called. I was endorsed as a candidate on the Wednesday, and on the Thursday the election was called. So I've been campaigning since then. Unlike Nicole, I haven't been going around for the last 4 months. This is my 14th campaign for the Greens. It's my 4th for Monero. My very first one was for Monero back in 1995, and I spent a lot of time here in Jindabyne and around doing stuff about the river and environmental flows. And I'm not sure that things have got much better as far as I can see. I think they might have a little bit. I was elected as a councillor to the newly amalgamated Pellerine Council in 2004. We named it Pellerine later. And I stood again in 2008, but I didn't want to re-stand for a further term. The Greens, as you may know already, are based on 4 principles, so it's very clear what we stand for. We stand for looking after the earth, looking after people, which we call social and economic justice in our principles, grassroots democracy, which is probably not regional councils so much as local councils so that people don't lose their voice, and peace and non-violence, which extends to doing politics differently, basically, not being adversarial, not having ego point scoring, but working together and collaborating. Climate change. What are we doing about it? I can't believe that we're where we are. I was recently at my favourite beach and that I've been going to for my whole life, which is slightly more than 6 decades. And where I used to walk along the beach, you now can't walk there at all when it's high tide. You're up to your knees because of rising sea levels. I went to Franz Josef Glacier over in New Zealand in 2003, and I climbed up it. When I went back in 2016, you couldn't even get to it unless you went in a helicopter, and I couldn't bear to look at it. It's really tragic, and there's going to be no snow here in a while if we don't do something about it. And we keep electing governments who don't seem to think it's a problem. The Greens, and it was in the Canberra Times yesterday, commissioned the Parliamentary Library to look at what the emissions would be for the 114 new coal, gas and oil projects that the LNP supports. And it was estimated that the emissions would be 2.5 times what we're already putting out. The reason this is happening, a lot of us believe, is because there is so much money coming from the fossil fuel industry and going to the major parties. 2.1 million in the latest reporting period, which was released last week. 1.3 of that went to the LNP and nearly 800,000 to the ALP. It's not about populism. It shouldn't be about populism in politics. It's not about throwing money at electorates. I don't know if people heard the ABC report. Is that my time? Oh no. Okay, well, all right, I'll have to say that later then. Okay, I'll hope to fit that in later. Thank you.
Just because I started my first question ahead of time, I've mixed it up a little bit. Education, this was a question on our education system. Jindabyne is getting a new school. Hooray!
Okay.
It was the state's largest central school, and by all indications the school will soon fill the new capacity ahead of time. At the same time, SNAG, Snowy Mountain Grammar School, is also growing with their master plan fully activated and construction already well underway to cope with the extra facilities. The state government has previously promised an education precinct around the location of the new schools. This was to include TAFE and a university campus. It's hoping that the curriculum will be on point with hospitality, sports medicine, sports management, sports marketing, basically anything that makes sense within the mountains. The question for the candidate is, do you support TAFE? And do you support TAFE in Jindabyne?
I'll stay seated for these if you don't mind. I don't think there's a need for us to stand up now, and I'd just like to give you a look at this. This is the Connected Learning Centre that Paul Toole and I turned the sod on at lunchtime today. A $7 million facility. I have the plans here with me right now that I'm happy to pass around to be looked at in terms of providing this incredible initiative, this terrific investment into this particular community to address all of those points raised in that question. I am wholeheartedly behind it. I think the education precinct and what is planned for that area for Jindabyne going forward is absolutely fantastic. I hope to be part of the New South Wales government that's continuing to deliver on this sort of project for our communities, regardless of their size. Not just the bigger communities like Queanbeyan, but those like Jindabyne, whether it's Delegate, Dalgety. Yes, I am absolutely behind this TAFE, this Connected Learning Centre, and the Country University Centre that is also coming to Jindabyne as part of that as well, making sure that our young people are looked after, their futures are looked after, and so our communities are looked after into the future as well.
The Greens have probably the strongest education policy as recognised by the Teachers Federation of any party. And I would like to say that we are extremely concerned about the erosion of TAFE funding that's happened over time. We certainly support a TAFE for here. We support provision of facilities as close as possible to the people who need them, and more we need to have things closer to people so they don't have to travel. So that's all I need to say about that.
Do I support TAFE? Yes. We're going to hear a lot tonight, a lot of questions about taking things forward. We're 10 years into this journey, and the TAFE system in the Monero is in crisis. Enrolments are down, students can't even enrol in some courses in Cooma. You can't go to the Cooma TAFE and even do a Year 10 adult, transitional sort of course. You can do hospitality, which is, I'll give a tick for that, that's good. But you can't do agriculture, you can't do construction in Queanbeyan. All I'll say is we need, and I agree, it's great, the education precinct's excellent, big tick there. John was quite an effective member, let's be honest. But we need less sod turnings and more delivery. So, if you're 10 years into this journey, maybe it's time for a fresh approach. So, thank you.
I'll just ask an extension to that question, particularly to you, Bryce, because you've been very popular with pushing Cooma TAFE. Is this area big enough for two TAFEs?
Yeah, I think it is, but it has to work strategically with CIT. Because CIT is a behemoth in Canberra, and if they get that's part of the issue is that CIT has sort of started cannibalising some of the courses on the edge of Queanbeyan. I think we can. We've got a huge hospitality sector here, and also I think in the education precinct, not only should we be celebrating the wonderful winter sports, but also maybe something about environmental stewardship as well. Locally, think about just the most amazing, unique alpine park just on our left shoulder, out there. We need to also have that as part of our education journey locally as well.
Thank you. Controversial question here. Has anybody worked with national parks? I feel safe in asking this question then. There is a symbiotic relationship between Jindabyne and the national parks. The National Parks and Wildlife Service charge a gate fee of $17 in summer and $29 in winter. The gate fees largely end up in the state coffers. It's been often said that at some point that the gate fee is more than enough to carry Kosciuszko National Park. Would you support the idea of taking some of the national park gate fees and either putting it back into Jindabyne or putting it into council, so that council can do the job in improving Jindabyne's facilities?
This issue has been raised with me on a number of occasions, not just in this area, but more broadly as well over the last 4 months. And obviously it is quite a complex one, and my understanding of it, in being able to look at it to the degree that I can in the time that I've had available to me, is that John Barilaro had looked quite closely at it, and I think all of you in the room will acknowledge, and by that proviso that you made at the beginning there of that question, Olivia, that the difficulties and the challenges in dealing with that particular topic. And what I am committed to saying is that I am happy to take that forward should I be elected, in order to have those conversations about how that type of process might work, how it might be better done, because I know that, again, that the conversation has been had, the debate has been going around for a long period of time. I'm a very practical, down-to-earth person. I don't want to keep having the same discussions, the same arguments over and over like a dog chasing its tail. I want to be able to say, how can we achieve the outcome? What do we need to do? What is coming back from the community on the ground? But we also need to know the solutions in terms of where we're going and how we're going to achieve it, rather than just being there and being told, no, it won't work. So I'm absolutely happy to take it forward and do everything that I can to address it in a proactive and progressive manner, and hope that we might be able to come to a satisfactory outcome on it.
I hadn't thought about that as an idea until you said it, and so I can't really comment on that, but I do think that we need to look at how much funding has been taken away from national parks, both federally and state, over time. I was doing a bit of writing on that last year. There was a really good item on it on 7:30, I think, and some of the stats were astounding about the millions that weren't any longer being spent on national parks. There's a huge potential for more employment in this area if the state government puts adequate funding into national parks, because they get a bad rap about a lot of things, but a lot of the time it's because there aren't enough people on the ground to do the stuff, and we really need to prop up the national parks in a genuine way with proper financing.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I think this one's a bit of an interesting micro question about a macro problem. So funding for local government in general. You know, there's some former councillors are some current councillors in the room, and some MPs. That's a tricky one as well. You know, the rate peg well below where staff and wages are. But let's step back a bit further. The biggest jewel in the crown, while this is this wonderful Kosciuszko National Park and obviously the Jindabyne Reservoir. That has been gutted by this current government. They have had more and more funding cuts. And that is why we start talking about gate fees, where it's going to go, whatever. We have to step back, strategically plan and properly fund our National Parks and Wildlife Service.
Yeah.
I think like this, there's part two to the question, I think. Councils. As you're aware, we're an amalgamated council. And as you're probably aware, it was not really a popular decision before, during, or after amalgamation. A lot of people in the LGA now believe that the amalgamation is not delivering either fiscally or the social benefits promised. So we've got two questions. One is related to funding. Given the fiscal failure of amalgamation and the current push for council to increase rates before they've attempted to reduce costs, are you in favour of relooking at the state government funding model for council, especially for rural council that have a vastly different population makeup? Part one. Part two, would you support an LGA-wide vote on de-amalgamation?
Yeah, well, that's quite a complex situation to break down in 60 seconds, I'll have to say. And of course, it's like, and I declare here that, as I mentioned to you, that my husband had been the Mayor of Queanbeyan-Pallarang as the merged council there, and so while I'm declaring that, it's like I can also say that it was external resources that suggested that, and external voices that suggested that the Queanbeyan-Pallarang merger was one of, if not the best, to occur in the state. I know that there were possibly more fractures down here in snowy Monero. I know that for a fact, it's like having been part of that journey, that many in Pallarang had been concerned about the merger, that there had been the difficulties that were suggested and the challenges, and now the vast majority are very happy with the merger in Queanbeyan-Pallarang. When it comes to Snowy Monero, of course there was the situation that you had 3 councils merged as opposed to Queanbeyan-Pallarang with 2. However, Snowy Monero was given $15 million in order to bring that about. Queanbeyan-Pallarang had been $10 million. So you've got those things that it's a pretty broad sort of thing to get to very quickly.
For an extra minute, can you give us an idea of whether you would look at changing the funding model
for rural councils?
Look, I think all of those things, and again, having seen it firsthand, I know how difficult the funding models are and the constraints that are being dealt with for councils. I understand the pressures that they're under. You can see it with our roads and everything that is going on in that space. And there are, of course, moves afoot, as you are all aware, of roads being taken back by the state government in order to see them better managed. So do things and do processes need to be looked at and done better? Of course. Of course, that's what it's always about, improving our situations. So yes, does it need to be looked at, questioned and addressed? Certainly. And should those conversations be had? Absolutely. Rate pegging being one of them. I'm not sure if people are aware that the Local Government Act is more than 100 years old. It's a creaky old thing that does need to be revisited. And again, it's like I'm getting down into the complexities and details of all of this. So I'll move on from that to say that your second question, while I am happy to support if councils, if both of the new councils, and of course both are largely new councillors that are making up both of these councils, should they choose to go back to the communities with the suggestion of a referendum on whether or not they want to see their councils demerged, I will support that proposition on the basis that the communities are absolutely kept abreast of what that involves, the costs it entails. That's just for the referendum alone of what that means, and then to make sure that it is fully transparent, fully informed as to the costs involved in terms of attempting demergers. And we are talking millions and millions of dollars to see that happen, if that were to be the case. So I will support councils in saying if they want to take it to their communities for a referendum, but they need to be fully transparent about what that means into the future.
Caroline, you've got 3
Well, if a new funding model means stopping cost shifting, yeah, I totally support it. As a past councillor, I was constantly bemused and amazed at how councils were expected to do more and more with less, and I'm sure any councillor in the room or past councillor will relate to that. Back in 2002, when we were promised that there'd be no forced amalgamation, we had an amalgamation, and Pallarang was the result of 2 full councils and part of 2 others. So when we were then re-amalgamated a couple of years ago for Queanbeyan Pallarang Council to be formed, that was already an amalgamated council, and so now we don't even have local government, we have regional government, and let's not pretend that it's local anymore, because it isn't, and it's so far away from people who want to have a voice and who want to hear their voice heard. I would venture to suggest that down the track a bit, and I'm not saying this is going to happen soon, we need to look at strengthening local voices, grassroots democracy, to the extent of having local government that's really strong and properly funded and in the Constitution, and maybe not even having state governments per se. We could still have states, but we could have regions that are made up of, it's serious,
Yeah.
It's serious. I've been part of a group for years that have abolished state governments, and there's been a lot of work done on it. It's lost its, energy at the moment. But who knows down the track, if we ever become a republic, that might become part of it. But I do know that we've lost true democracy by having regional government and not local government. And we really need to do something about it, and I've certainly supported the calls by the Bombala Council, the demerge people, and fully support it and want to be there when it happens.
Well, thank you. I'll declare I'm a current councillor on QPRC, the Regional Council. This is a tricky one, but with a simple sort of line in a way. Labor Party policy is that if communities vote to have a referendum on demerger, then that can happen. But those communities need to be fully informed about the decision that they are taking. And for example, we know that Hasbro a lot of challenges that merge council here. 3 very different economies, if you like: Cooma, Jindabyne, Bombala. And that has, in some parts, has worked, and I think maybe the new council should be given a chance to try and make that work, given the election just the other day. And QPRC it has worked okay. It wasn't a major issue at the election, but that said, if Bill can bring that forward, then we'll support that, because that's Labor Party policy. Just on a couple of quick things. Do you remember the 15,000 kilometre road promise? People might have forgotten. The last election, the Nationals promised to take over 15,000 kilometres of regional roads. I think they've got, correct me if I'm wrong, 350, 1,000 kilometres in. That's a long way short. More broadly, the way we fund local government and how local government works at the state level is a very good 2023, that's a state whole macro level issue. And Greg Warren's doing a great job in pulling our policy along there. So I'll leave it at that.
So what you're saying basically is I can store that question until 2023.
Well, it'd be fun to do it, obviously.
SAP. I think we all know what SAP is. Strategic Activation Precinct that followed on from the Go Jindabyne project that started in 2018. Basically, it's trying to articulate a vision for the Snowy Mountains. Of course, with Jindabyne, it's very hard. We also know that it's been tremendously championed by the previous member, John Baliaro. And what we'd certainly be keen to understand is what do you think of the project and what would you do in your first year as local member to champion the SAP in the Snowy Mountains?
Thanks, Olivia. And of course, in my numerous visits down to Jindabyne, I've met with many of you who are here this evening in various community groups to discuss exactly this situation. So I think I've made my position clear in all of those meetings, and I back that right now, that this is a visionary project, as the community has agreed on, and John Barilaro was showing considerable foresight into looking to how this might help continue to develop this absolutely amazing area, this unique part of the Monero, and a 40-year vision is what he had planned. And I know that we had the Go Jindabyne and now part of the SAP as well. I know that there has been extensive community consultation. There have been changes and alterations. I am fully behind the Special Activation Precinct and what it means for the future of this wonderful place. I can see the vision, I embrace the vision, but I also know that there are still concerns out there in the community that we need to address. And so these things, because it is so visionary, because something like this does take time, we need to make sure that it's done right. And that, I'm not going anywhere in terms of backing away from support at any point in time. I'm fully behind it, and if it takes us a little bit more time to make sure that the community is fully on board and taken along with this, any concerns addressed to make sure that when we move into the future, we're all part of this together.
This SAP is an innovative evolution of what's usually the industrial approach that's happened in other places. And I haven't heard a lot about it until I started looking into it for this campaign. But the idea that it's going to embrace cultural stuff, heritage centre, it'll revitalise the foreshore, road and sewer might be improved, all those sorts of benefits that will come, but it needs to be a holistic approach. I echo what Nicole said. It's going to be a huge project, and it needs to be monitored so that it's socially, environmentally and economically beneficial and responsible for the town. Looking at all the issues that are going to flow from it, such as parking, that could be a big one. And someone just said to me today, there needs to be not just high-end tourism and accommodation, it needs to be for everyone, so that all levels of income in families can take part and enjoy it, so that people can not only stay in resorts, but they can come and stay in tents. So we really need to make sure that it's approached in a very holistic way, so that everything is taken into account.
Well, at the risk of being in furious agreement, I sort of agree, except to say that I'd welcome the opportunity to be the member for Monero and have a fresh look at that and talk to everyone and try and build that plan. I fully support it, we support it. I think it was great that actually we were able to make sure we had all that snowy money go actually into the regions. You might remember the original government decision was to put it in consolidated revenue. It's good to have that going into the regions. I will just quickly say though, I do support the idea of taking care of some of the key infrastructure. Council will never have enough money to do the roads, the sewer, some of those key foundations. It's good to remember, as the Earl Davis pointed out to me when I was catching up with her, that this town was sort of designed and laid down when the lake was, being built. It's never really, been planned to be a tourist fantastic destination, a global, centre, if you like. So this is an opportunity to get that right. I really like to take that forward.
Can I just add one more quick thing that I've got? I didn't mention, the possibility of what is inappropriate development in KMP, and it's really important not to lose the soul and the control of the area as part of this.
Thank you. Question from the chamber. The Alpine Award, I'm not quite sure whether the audience understands this, but it's actually a very specific wage accord that addresses the resorts. It's only available to the resorts, and it's called the Alpine Award, which takes care of not only lifting of people from point A to point B, but basically any job that originates in the resort for any employee who's employed by the resorts. Unfortunately, it's not available to any of the other businesses. Given that we've now got an SAP, a studio-based precinct, and given that we've got very clear boundaries for this precinct, would you support the idea of a level playing field for all businesses within this tourism precinct by making the Alpine Award available to everybody within the Alpine precinct involving tourism? Sorry, what was it? They ditched it?
Yeah, they ditched it. Terry Packer bought it
In 2010.
Yeah, they can't get staff. They ditched the Alpine Award currently.
There you go.
There you go.
Why don't we turn this into a question, if you don't mind, on indulgence about staff, where staff live, working paying conditions, and the fact that we need to seriously have a conversation about how we actually facilitate tourism in the area. We've got a problem with housing supply, we've got a problem with housing affordability. I've heard stories, I didn't go too negative with staff.
I've got questions on those. Don't steal my thunder.
Oh, okay. Let me just finish up. We had a terrible situation where staff weren't able to get testing to see if they had COVID. They had to be forced to do shifts. We need to do this better across the board.
I found out about this earlier from Olivier because when I first heard about the Alpine Award, I had an idea it was some sort of prize. So he put me straight on that. Yeah, anyway. So as I understand it from Olivier, the lift is 37.5 hours a week, then overtime after that. Whereas for Olivier, he has to start, and other people who aren't part of the lifting, he has to pay overtime with much fewer hours. So just in from an equity point of view, yes, I think it certainly should be looked at, and it should be across the board, and we should be looking at it as a precinct, not just the resort.
To answer that question a little more broadly, now that we've heard that other information as well, I've had discussions with you, Olivier, and I've also come and visit here the Minister for Hospitality, Kevin Anderson, in one of the visits that I've made to Jindabyne. Brought him down to meet with various business members, and we did discuss this particular topic about the opportunity for at least parts potentially of Jindabyne to be rezoned as a tourism precinct. And the Minister had told the group and told Olivia there at the time that he would be happy to look at that. He was in quite good agreement that it sounded like a feasible potential option for us moving forward that may solve a number of challenges that we face in this area. So I am happy, again, should I be elected come Saturday, to continue to have those conversations with Kevin Anderson and to bring him back here again in order to say how might we move that one forward as well, because yes, he did get quite behind the idea of the tourism precinct.
I just want to clarify as well, it's
Thank you.
brought in as a winter award. Trevo and that stretched it out in the summer and it's failed. And everyone should be paid the same wage to work in the city as they are here.
Interestingly, because when I looked at it this morning, the award actually had been updated 1st of November 2021.
They don't get overtime on a Sunday. You've got cleaners working up there for $26.50 an hour. You know?
Good to know that it's level
Like
playing
housing
field.
adults.
Because they can't get rat tests, they have to get PCRs and Uber.
Yeah.
I got plenty of rat here.
Social housing. We've got 3 questions now that involves housing. We identified that there's 3 kinds of housing: social, affordable, and seasonal workers accommodation. So if we can just start with social housing. Jindabyne is becoming an affluent town, attracting people and families from all over. We have 6 houses in Jindabyne that are classed as social housing. It's always been agreed that we need more, and it's rarely stated how much more that we actually need. What do you see to be the role of state government in providing social housing here in Jindabyne? I'll just mix it up.
I did an interview with National Council of Social Service last week. They were talking to candidates about various issues, and these plus homelessness were top of the list. The Greens have a really strong housing policy, and just a couple of days ago a constituent, I think from Jindabyne, sent me an ABC report, Could Australia Learn from Singapore to Make Housing More Affordable? And he thought that it might go really well here. And the guy who's proposing it is calling it housemate. It just says Singapore's an island city-state with about 300,000 more residents than Greater Sydney, but far less than 10% of its land area. This is the important bit. According to economist Cameron Murray, it's managed to boost home ownership for 25 to 34-year-olds from 60 to nearly 90% over the past 4 decades, at a time when the percentage of Australians that age who own a home has plunged from 60 to 45%. So the idea is that the government buys the land, whether that be by compulsory acquisition or what, and then people, as long as they don't have any other house, they get an interest-free loan, they can build on it. If they want to sell it, they have to stay there for 7 years. There are various clauses to make sure that it remains, it has its integrity. Okay, so is that... Oh,
This is an issue that is very close to my heart, and not just from a professional or political point of view, but I know how easy it is for people to go from that level of having a roof over their head to not having a roof over their head. And when I was quite young and my mum left my dad, we had to live in a car for a while. So I know exactly how easy that is to occur, and how we must look after the most vulnerable in our communities. This isn't only a problem for the Jindabyne area, it's actually more broad than that as well. And I've spoken with many in Queanbeyan who are part of the Social Housing Association there. We've got some terrific community groups that have been devoted to this cause for a long period of time. I know the pressure, I know the stress that's occurring in that space, and that we do need to be doing more. We have had all of the situations, be it bushfires and COVID and all the rest of it, that have leapfrogged us and put us into situations that we may not necessarily have been expecting, but they are being addressed. I know that the New South Wales government is addressing it. I am absolutely happy to champion this and continue to have these conversations.
Thank you. Nutshell, we need to do better, and this needs to be improved. There's a bit of a theme developing, like we just need to keep working harder. We're 11 years into this government, 11 years. This problem isn't new. It probably has picked up over the last few years, but we need more social housing, we need more affordable housing, and we need to look at worker accommodation. Snowy 2.0 didn't come out of nowhere. We knew that was coming. This boom in tourism, we knew that was coming. So, small tip to the government for their trial program they're launching, which is actually Snowy, Monero Council and QPRC can be part of if they're able to identify land and have a partnership there, and that is good. But it shouldn't take a by-election and some political pressure for that to happen. It should have happened earlier. So if you're not happy, maybe it's time for a fresh approach to this particular challenge. But I too, and I thank Nicole for sharing that story. This really matters to a lot of people, and we need to do better. And we need local government, state government working better to address it. Thank you.
Housing was probably the most popular question when we asked for questions from community to come in. So if you don't mind, I'll do it justice by talking about affordable housing and also seasonal workers accommodation quite separately. Affordable housing is a very interesting concept here at Jindabyne. Like most towns, Jindabyne needs to attract seasonal workers, so essential workers. Unlike most towns, we find it easy to sell Jindabyne as a place to live, but fail to hire these uniquely skilled workers due to the cost of housing. The state government used to make provisions in rural towns for housing of police, teachers and medical staff, but over the years, one broad rule has changed so that affordable housing for state government employees has been removed. Do you recognise the problem? And what policies or efforts would you make to address the issue?
Yes, of course I recognise the problem, because it's probably the topic on everybody's mind in all of the areas that I have visited, wherever I have gone throughout this electorate. And yes, it is one of my priorities as well. And regardless of some of the comments being made tonight, progress has been made. Progress is continuing to be made. You don't wave a magic wand and have all of these things solved overnight, as we all well know. We have been dealing with very difficult circumstances. We have been trying to have our roadmap forward into how we progress our communities and allow them to recover from what we've all gone through over the last few years. Housing affordability and availability is one of those, because as we know, we are attracting many more people to our regional areas, and rightly so, because why wouldn't they want to come and live here? We now have to be able to provide the infrastructure and services that can cater to that, and to also provide for our families, our young ones who are living here as well. And as I said, so progress is being made. It's not as though the New South Wales government is blind to this. They are fully aware of it and cognizant of some of the steps that need to happen. We've talked about issues such as, the potential for zoning, the potential to assist councils to streamline their services better. Paul Toole and I announced $30 million for exactly that just last week. There are more announcements coming in the coming days. I can't speak more about that right now. But as I said, this is a priority of mine. It has been a priority of the government, and I will continue to take it forward.
Seasonal workers can't afford to live here, and that's why they often can't come. There's nowhere for camper vans here. And in a town not too far from here, there were some teachers wanting to go to fill some vacancies, and they couldn't, because they couldn't afford to live there. So affordable housing is a massive problem everywhere. And we haven't touched on possibly the reason for this, the overarching cause of it. And that is that housing has become an investment rather than shelter. And as long as that continues and people want to make more and more when they sell houses, instead of just being satisfied that they've got a place to live. And I'm not saying people can't make some money, but this is what's caused the problem. People buy houses, when they sell them they want to make more money, and the prices are going up and up and up. And people are often using their houses, and it possibly happens here. And it's no offence to people who are doing it, but Airbnb means that people who might want to live here to work can't rent. And so all these things are contributing to the affordable housing problem.
Yeah, it's a very important issue, and it's a shame that some of those announced, maybe they're really good, we can make them tonight rather than worry about the media cycle. But going to the issue, in 2019, this was a topic I remember we talked about the Airbnb Swiss cheese effect that was happening in Nelson Bay. It was going to happen in Jindabyne. We've seen Berrydale become the satellite town, if you like, for key workers into Jindabyne. But one thing I would really support is that we're going to do this at QPRC, and Snowy Monero happy to try and lobby get money for you as well, to do actually a full housing strategy. So walk and chew gum, work with the state government on that housing affordability strategy, but also do your own housing strategy so that we can work with either the federal government. There's an election coming up, we need more social housing, we need to look at how we plan, on what subdivisions what requirements do we put on those subdivisions about how much housing stock needs to be affordable, what is affordable, and then how do we deal with key workers, and the idea of, whether you like it or not, Berrydale's even too expensive now to rent, possibly to be a key worker. So this is a key challenge. It's not new, we talked about it in 2019.
Did everybody see that article on, I think it was last weekend, from the Sydney Morning Herald, that had shown Narrow as the LGA with the highest price increase over the last 12 months? And this is the epicentre of it.
Yes.
Nowadays in Berrydale, you can't pick up anything for rent for less than $500. $500. When it comes down to seasonal workers accommodation, I'll probably make a statement rather than questions. I think we've addressed housing. But what we do know from the SAP is that at the moment we have about 5,000 seasonal workers in Jindabyne during the year. Most of it is in winter time, and certainly I think about a third of them are hired by, actually 2/3 hired by the resorts and 1/3 by the businesses here in Jindabyne. The SAP also states by 2036 the area will need 9,000 seasonal workers. So if the housing affordability doesn't change, we're going to have more and more of an issue, and really needs a solution. That's my statement. Healthcare. We acknowledge the wonderful work being carried out by our health staff here in Jindabyne and in the mountains generally. However, the reality is that we have a problem with staffing levels in Cooma, making an emergency trip to Canberra a real and everyday occurrence. Given we are an adventure playground, why is it that the state government will not support a hospital in Jindabyne but continues to fund small hospitals in small towns? Do you think it makes sense to rely on another territory's health services?
Well, just for the record, I fully support small health services in small towns. For example, Delegate and Bombala. It's not a Hunger Games sort of game here where you take one from give to the other. Cooma Hospital is under stress. The nurses down there reached out to us. Double shifts, extra overtime, people are leaving, not enough midwives. This is what happens when you focus all on capital, not enough on service. This is the end result of it. It's good to extend the hospital, and maybe the ED doesn't quite get where the ambulance is, that's fine in Cooma. But you've got to look at the staff, look at their paying conditions. I remember 2019, this was a hot topic. We promised nurse-to-patient, nurse ratios, and we had signs up everywhere saying, "Oh, don't worry, nothing to see here, 5,000 more nurses coming." In fact, quite a heated argument on the booze as well, I remember about it. Well, here we are, 11 years in, still an issue. Maybe it's time for a fresh approach.
Just today I received an email from Kate Fairman in the Upper House, who's been in 15 days of hearings for this inquiry on this very topic. And I just want to read to you what she said. For too long there's been underinvestment in our regional health workforce, and we're now hearing the consequences. Most frightening are the reports of critical shortages of regional doctors and nurses, which we heard was a massive issue even before COVID. Story after story of just how hard it is to attract GPs to rural New South Wales, of towns down to a handful of GPs with no relief in sight, of GPs closing their books because of the demand, with patients having to wait months for an appointment, or simply people having to travel hundreds of kilometres if they're lucky enough to get an appointment in another town. The pandemic has exposed the growing cracks in a system that's deep in trouble and has been for a long time. The good news though is that there are now some pretty simple things the government could do right now to make a huge difference. First, pandemic pay and bonuses for all frontline healthcare workers. Second, regional doctors must also be encouraged and supported to remain working and living in these communities. And third, we need safe staff to patient ratios, better conditions and fair pay for nurses and paramedics.
So that's a yes.
The first thing I'd like to do is to acknowledge our healthcare workers, and certainly those on the front line, and everything they have done over the last couple of years to keep us safe and make sure that we are being looked after as well as we can possibly be. And I'm also not going to steal the thunder of the wonderful woman that we have here with us tonight, Bronnie Taylor, who is the Regional Health Minister and is better placed than any of us at this table to address these questions, if you don't mind. And I don't think there's any need for that. And and to say that, of course, our healthcare services are a critical part of all of our communities, and particularly our smaller communities. And this government has done more to deliver on our healthcare services and our education services than any governments previously. And I am fully backing Bronnie Taylor right there as the Regional Health Minister. We together have had conversations with David Gillespie as the Federal Health Minister as well, making sure it was, Bronnie and John Barilaro who delivered the renal dialysis unit for our Cooma Hospital, continually keeping our eye on the ball in that situation, and our smaller areas such as the Delegate Multi-Purpose Service Centre, the rumours that get spread that they're going to be closed down when they're not. We are not going to leave our smaller communities without critical services such as these. And do they need to be addressed in areas like this? Yes, they do.
For those people who don't live in Jindabyne, you're probably not aware that every time we hear of a helicopter, we think of fatality. That's what it takes, unfortunately, to transport a seriously injured person from the mountain or in Jindabyne to go to, unfortunately, Canberra. And unfortunately, I was a recipient of that service. Fantastic service. However, in an adventure playground like this, perhaps we need a little bit more. Aged care. I've got the Jindabyne Community Association here, who are tasked with trying to bring aged care into the area. A society is often judged by how well it cares for its most vulnerable. We've already seen a poor effort in housing and in regards to the injured and the sick. What breaks a lot of hearts is the total lack of options for our elderly. This lack of option often sees people leave Jindabyne for the coast or for Canberra. Our population statistics has our population over 75 at only 1.1% compared to the national average of 2.3%. We understand that aged care is a federal issue, however capital grants are more often than not coming from the state. If elected, would you help champion the need for aged care? Even if you were not elected, what would you advise for the town in order to be able to get aged care?
Fairly simple answers for that. Yes, of course I would, and I do, and I have in my past life. And you're quite right that it is a federal issue, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to champion it at the state level and be making sure that we are drawing attention to it, particularly for our smaller communities. And that's what I'm about, and why I decided to put my hand up to go forward with this sort of role in the first place, to make sure that our smaller communities, our regional and rural communities, are not forgotten and not left behind. And I'm not saying that they have been, but I'm saying that into the future we need to make sure that more is done, that we don't get left behind. And that of course includes not just having the services and facilities that we need to keep our younger people here, to keep our families here, to make sure that our areas remain vibrant, but to make sure that we're looking after our elderly, to make sure that we're looking after those most in need of assistance, not just as they age, but whether they're, disability services as well. All of these the most vulnerable in our communities that we can always be doing more for, and I am absolutely happy to say that I will push as hard as I can to make sure that those in our community who most need it are looked after.
Well, I sort of agree. This is mostly a federal matter. I take the note of the capital grant. That we all actually agree aged care needs to be done better. Labor Party federally has been pushing very hard to see reform in this sector. I actually met with one of the nursing homes in Cooma, and they were telling us about how the funding model is broken. It needs to change. We just need to do better for those that are vulnerable in our community. And I'd encourage you to vote for Christy McBain at the next federal election in May, and hopefully an Albanese Labor government can tackle this issue properly. It's one of the areas we didn't fix properly. We helped with with childcare, we did a lot on schools funding and the NDIS, which does need a lot of work as well. And this is the next one that needs big reform in this country.
Yep.
Happy to, very micro level, work with council, work with the group to try and find obviously land, etc. But until we find land provider, it's a bit of a horse before the cow.
Yep.
Thank you.
I won't echo what's been said because some good points have been made. The reason that state and local spheres of government can't get involved in aged care It'd be great to see a not-for-profit organisation here for aged care, and I think with the Royal Commission findings coming out, it's a really good opportunity to take note of those and to create something fantastic for this region that doesn't do a lot of the things that were done or does do the things that weren't done.
2 questions for me to go, just 2. Then we'll open up to the floor for half an hour. Does anybody work here for Snowy Hydro? Oh, good. We all know that Lake Jindabyne is actually Jindabyne Dam. We all know what will happen in a drought when it becomes a dust bowl. And we also know when the drought breaks, it can flood and have a similar economic consequences, keeping away tourism. I think we can all see the effects in our beautiful Banjo Patterson Park, what happens when we go above 100%. As a government asset, like any other government asset, like an international airport or an expressway, the relationship between need and comfort is often tested. So International Airport, for instance, if you live close by, they try to adjust the flight plan, they sponsor or they pay for double glazing windows. When you're on an expressway, they put up soundproofing barriers, all for the benefit of the community. The question, would you support working with Snowy Hydro to improve their social custodianship and look at an agreement for a minimum and a maximum level of the dam?
I can say that I've already taken steps towards fostering such a communication and relationship in that regard. When Kevin Anderson was here a week or so ago, he's also the Minister for Water. This was addressed with him at the time. The minute he left that room, he made the phone call to Roger Whitby, the CCO of Snowy Hydro, and made Roger aware of the concerns that were raised, particularly at this point in time, the height of the lake and the impact that it's having here on our green space area, and the Minister was assured that they are aware of it and they are addressing it, and that it will be attended to by the events that are going to be occurring for Easter this year. So that was relayed to me directly. I have also organised to have should I be successful on Saturday, to have an immediate meeting with Roger Whitby about these matters that we're addressing right now and how we might be taking them forward and how they can be properly addressed in a more formal way.
I'm only just starting to get my head around this issue, and I just don't understand why the lake is this high. I don't understand why the Malonga is not allowed to flow, and I don't understand why and I don't understand why some of the water can't be let out of it. There are going to be real problems if what you suggested, Olivier, doesn't happen. So I totally agree.
I'm surprised there's not an MOU in place actually already about the operation of the lake, and also just want to put on the record, I don't know why we haven't been able to get to the 28%, that we're 21% flow down the Snowy. It's obviously an issue for people in Dalgety. There was a big agreement that happened back with Bob Carr, Victoria government, hasn't ever quite landed that, so I'm not sure how we've got lots of water in the area either, but happy to go forward on that one.
Just for you to know, Lake Light, which is probably one of our premier events that happens at Easter, has been cancelled this year. So there's been a lot of talk within accommodation providers as to what to do. There's been a lot of communication with the artists who spent the last 12 months doing their creation, and of course now it's been postponed. TSM, Tourism Snowy Mountains, is a rare tourism marketing operation. Rare because when most of the tourism organisations were dismantled by the state government in favour of Destination New South Wales, when most tourism initiatives centred around the distribution from Sydney, TSM remained viable through working with large sponsors, foundation partners, which are usually the resorts, council, as well as Snowy Hydro. As the state government is looking at tourism's SAP, Strategic Activation Precinct around the tourism, investing in infrastructure, would you consider it appropriate to look for ways to help fund TSM so that it can continue to market this region to the world? This is particularly important as recently the council voted to reduce funding to a measly $5,000 a year. Compare this to coastal councils that are spending upward of $500,000 a year, not to mention what Queensland is doing at nearly $6 million for the Gold Coast. Would you support supporting TSM so that it can continue to promote our wonderful area that offers so much more than just a national park?
Yes, I haven't heard much about it, but yes, but underlying this is we need action on climate change because there won't be the tourism that you have at this level unless we address it. So that is just underlying everything. It's going to change our whole lives. It impacts on health of people, millions of people around the world who die in extreme weather events, people who die from extreme heat and extreme cold, etc., etc. So I can't say it enough, and I haven't said it enough tonight. We have to look at climate change because there won't be anything else after it's all gone.
To the specifics, you've seen that councils, I know that councils under financial stress, so perhaps that was underlying that decision. But there's a lot of tourism buckets. I'm sure we'll be able to try and support the promotion of the area, that's for sure. But there are some other macro issues as well, we've talked about quite a lot tonight, that impact tourism as well and be able to facilitate that. So yes, happy to search and try and work with the community, the government to find that.
I think it's like I recollect having read something, the New South Wales Government, John Barilaro, had supported TSM, $700,000 was it?
That was a grant given over 2 years, yeah.
Right, so there was, so in other words, there has been support from the New South Wales Government during John Barilaro's time. And so, of course, anything that supports tourism in this region, we know how significant it is. An overall, intended, an overall tourism plan. I know the work, well, it's not in depth, but I certainly know some of the good work that TSM has been doing. And if John Barilaro had seen fit to deliver a grant of $700,000 at the time, it's certainly something that we could look towards into the future. As has been pointed out, there are any number of grants and funding options that are still available at the moment that are going to continue to be made available as we continue to safely and soundly emerge from COVID and making sure that we're all getting back on our feet, including our small businesses, encouraging people to come back to our regions, our much needed tourists, making sure that we're lifted out of this together. So, of course, anything that is able to boost and support that deservedly needs to be looked at.
That were my questions. I'll pass it over to the floor now. I think we've still got some time left. The three candidates still look relatively awake and engaged.
Do we have a chance to sort of do a minute of closing remarks?
Once we get these guys' questions. Does anybody have a question from the floor?
Yeah, can I just go, I just make some notes, I'd just like to give my feedback as a local, someone who ran as a councillor and someone that's worked with Redbow.
Yeah. High on the priority list, I think, is transportation and aviation in the area. I work for State Transit Authority. You've got very poor public transport here for staff to get to the resort. What they put in was inadequate, and even the operator from the coaches agreed with me that it should have picked up with a smaller vehicle and then run out of the national parks, gone via the ski tube, and then into Thredbo for the staff in the morning. Okay, that was the first one I wanted to go. Okay, TAFE Cooma currently has 5 students that are in their second year. I'm one of them. Not here tonight, but they've got an apprentice here. Carlos, he's one of their apprentices. The other apprentice is from the Alpine Hotel. I'm one of the mature age students, and there's another one in there. And Tommy is another one, so he's at the one in Jindabyne there. Thredbo has for many years had 0 apprentices, so the resorts aren't putting into it whatsoever. You spoke about the national park. The local transport operators are defrauding the national parks by charging their customers and not paying to go into the park. Kerry Packer brought in the Alpine Award, and it was specifically for winter.
Bruce, do you have any questions for the candidates?
Yeah, I just wanted to cover some of the things. Thredbo had 51 apartments that they also sold off. So there goes 300 beds. So you need to address with the resorts with the problems. Sculpture in the Parks cancelled, you covered that. Tantagara's being flooded. You covered the AW139, the helicopters. There's 6 helicopters in New South Wales that Toll operates. 3 are at Bankstown, 2 are always in deep maintenance, like totally ripped apart. It's an ageing fleet. 1 goes to the ACT and 1 is Wollongong, Shell Harbour. They're currently running on an automotive fuel system. This is aviation we're talking about. It's not fit for aviation, and water and bacteria contamination occurs all the time. So it's a totally unsafe service. I brought this up with the New South Wales government, and it falls on deaf ears, but there, it's out there. Cheers, thanks.
Good evening. Most of you know me here at the Russell Vine. My family runs a renewables business in the local area, and it's a renewables question. Sorry, someone put their hand up. Sorry, it's a renewables question more for the state than the area. Around the state, in fact, around the country, there are rebate schemes in individual states which vary wildly. You have Jindabyne Council, John, remember Jindabyne Council that will give away low interest loans down in Victoria. You have certainly a battery rebate, a solar rebate, and a federal government solar rebate in Victoria. So you can actually get $7,500 worth of rebate in Victoria. If you live in Queanbeyan, you get a federal government rebate, $2,500. If you live in Canberra, at the ACT, you get a $4,000 battery rebate and the federal government rebate. My point is, it's all over the place, state by state, and the one state that's extremely disadvantaged is New South Wales. Let me go one step further, sorry. John Barilaro, when I asked him the same question, said that the Liberal Nationals would offer a $14,000 low-income loan to New South Wales. $14,000 is about half of what a system is worth, a quality system is worth. So the issue we've got is we're extremely disadvantaged against Victoria, Queensland, even the ACT in rebates. Is that what we can expect more of? Or would Labor have a different policy to sort of flattening the level playing field for all Australians? And I've seen what's happened with John. Is that going to change or continue on?
Difficult question, sorry, because you probably don't know the background.
No, I don't. I'll start. Yeah. No, I'm happy. I was going to answer it. Yeah, thanks. Well, I'm sure you know that the Greens want to have a target of 0 emissions by a lot sooner than any of the other parties. And in preparation for coming today, I downloaded some of our policies, both the federal and state policies for climate change, and there's as much support as there can be for renewables from the Greens. And where there are Greens on councils, that's, I think, where it happens more quickly. And so certainly there needs to be something happening, and it'd be great to have continuity across the country and a leadership from the top that said, let's all do it together, and let's not be, people being jealous of next door Shire because they're getting it better than we are.
Yes, councils that are in a position to provide rebates to try and get increased solar uptake, in their area, they should consider that, but they have to be in a strong enough financial position to do so. At the QPRC level, we took forward trying to drive a greener economy locally. I think the ACT has been leading the nation in some parts in that space. And we've actually got a couple of New South Wales MPs on the Labor side of the room, so we'll obviously be developing those policies in the lead up to the 2013 election. But I will say, rebates, I think, are a better way of going at a personal level, I think, than loans, because it allows the provider to take the price off through the rebate and get it back through the other way. So, which makes the consumer easier for the consumer.
Yes, I will acknowledge that I don't know too much about it more than in the general sense, and I wasn't aware of those obviously quite dramatic fluctuations between states. Obviously, they are all endeavouring to do as much as they can or what they can in order to be able to deliver on this. And as COVID has shown us, there's not always a lot of unity between our states. Should it be something that would be more uniform, you would think that that would make logical sense. Whether that's going to be able to be progressed, it's like I'm certainly not in a position to say. It's like it's something that I'm happy to consider and find out more about, which is the way I see all of this. It's like to find out before I'm able to volunteer information. But the other thing that I will say, and which was agreed on at the Meet the Candidates that we were at last night, is that this New South Wales government has done more than any other in order to advance renewables. We do have snowy hydro, you know, the greatest renewable. It's in the southern hemisphere. So and it was acknowledged the bipartisan support for the progress and steps that the New South Wales government has been making in this space. And I am absolutely 100% committed to ensuring further progress, sustainability, and opportunities in this type of area into the future.
Thank you. I've taken a question on text here. This is addressed to Bryce. You are preferencing a known anti-vaxxer, Andrew Fowler, above other candidates. Why are you putting politics first and Monero health last in this campaign? There's 2 days till polling day. If it wasn't you, would you condemn your leader's preference deal?
We've got the Greens second, we've got Andrew Fowler second last, and we've got the Nationals last because Dominic Perrottet didn't listen to the health advice back in December. He lifted the mask mandate, he stopped the QR code check-in, and he filled the nightclubs, knowing full well that it put extra pressure on our health system. Then he didn't have a plan for our health system. Then he didn't have a plan for business support. And then we had the Monty Python-esque situation where you were going to get fined for not reporting a rat test you couldn't get hold of. That's why we're putting the National Party last. That's what the New South Wales Party has done, and we're putting Andrew Fowler second last.
RJ?
Hi, my name's RJ. Somewhat apolitical at the moment, but I do have an important question, seeing as we have 2 female candidates. Also want to acknowledge Kate Washington who's here. What's been done for women in this area? I mean, I proudly grew up in one of the 6 asbestos housing Christian homes here in the north. And that's great, but that's a very long waiting list. So, as an example, a young lady's in a domestic abuse situation, she's got children. What are we doing to provide for those people so that they can get out of that situation? You know, where is their safety net? I've heard no mention of women's rights here. I mean, we've got Brittany Higgins, etc. It's a federal topic. It's in the news every day. What are we doing for those people? And why has that not been mentioned on anyone's platform? That's a very simple question.
And it's a great question, and to ask a woman a question about women's rights is like, you know, that it's like I could be here for the rest of the night, right? The first thing that we're doing is we're actually, all of us, all of the women here who are in leadership roles, it's about standing up and being leaders in our communities. And when people say to me, hey Nicole, are you really sure that you want to do this? You really sure that you want to put yourself into this world of politics with everything that it entails and some of the terrible things that go on? But you know what, it's like if strong women don't stand up and don't take the lead, we don't set an example to younger women coming through. The questions that you're asking about, I am, again, very pleased to point to Bronnie Taylor here in the room, who is also the Minister for Women, and just over the last few days has made some extraordinary announcements in relation to exactly those topics. I haven't even had the chance to catch up properly with Bronnie yet to know the full details of that, but I think there was something like $3.5 million that was announced just this morning in Queanbeyan going to domestic violence services in that region. Is that correct, Bronnie? So again, it's like we're being championed by some absolutely fantastic women. Bronnie's been in Parliament for a long period of time now. I hope to be able to join her and to be able to continue that role model leadership, taking the front foot in all of this, because we do know how important it is. And I think finally we're stepping up and realising just how significant these changes are. We've got 2 brand new councils, for the first time ever having a majority of women councillors. We've got Louise here with us as one of those. That Snowy Monero has its first female mayor in history, and I'm just disappointed to see that Queanbeyan Palorang, which also has a majority of females, didn't elect a female mayor to take that position as well.
It's not true that we're not campaigning on these things. It's just that tonight we haven't necessarily mentioned it, and the questions haven't got to it, but yours has, so thanks very much. My last media release, which I put out on Sunday night, was disadvantages on the rise in Monero NCOS report shows. And NCOS put out, for the 4 by-elections, they put out papers with specific information relating to what is going on in each of the electorates. And in relation to one of the things you just mentioned, there's been a 9.8% increase in reports of domestic violence over June 19 to June 2020. That's happening in this electorate. So when I was talking to Joanna Quilty, who's the CEO, I said we need governments to think about long-term solutions for these problems. Until they do, it will all be about populist band-aid solutions. When people don't have enough money for nutritious food, or to find adequate, safe shelter, can't afford dental care, smoke a lot, or self-medicate with drugs because of mental health stress, they are setting themselves up for ill health, often at no fault of their own. Drug law reform is urgently needed, so addiction is treated as a health and human rights issue rather than a law and order one. Governments need to stop taking donations from the hotels industry, which is indirectly causing family breakups and poverty through poker machines and gambling addiction. And I've already mentioned money from the fossil fuel industry. So I talked a lot about that in this, and it is a huge issue. And women's policy for the Greens is a big one, and I encourage you to have it online at it.
Here goes the white Anglo male trying to answer the question about women's participation and leadership. But I'm quite proud to be in the Labor Party where we have quotas, so that we have a better representation in our parliaments. We accept that we have to make sure that women take leadership roles and are in winnable positions in the parliament. Just like at QPRC, we have a female deputy mayor. My wife would tell me that just because there's a majority of women, that it's up to the women who decides the mayor. Esma voted for the mayor. You know, they're their own agency, and they'll make those minds up. But let's go actually to the question about services. We need less defunding of services and not playing catch up, but actually just funding them properly from the start. We need greater care, more housing, another thing that's come through. We need greater policing in this area and greater support for DV prevention across the whole of Monero.
No emergency accommodation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're exploring. Councillor
I took that hat off at 5 o'clock when I left Cooma. But my question is to everyone. I just want to gauge a better understanding of, if you can prioritise, what are your key 3 issues that you would like to address over the next 12 months should you be elected?
I think I've been asked this question a few times, and I sort of get it. But actually, the Monero is this wonderful collection of all individual communities, and each community often has its own challenges, like we've heard tonight. And if we're in Queanbeyan, housing would come up, but similar. But there'd be other issues. If you're in Braidwood, there might be something specific. So I think if I look at some of the best MPs, I think we actually federally have one of the best local MPs in opposition. That's Christy McBain. Her model is to work with community, find what's needed, and then work across the aisle, no matter what, to try and deliver for that community. That's the way I would try and work if I was fortunate enough to be elected to be a member for Monero. For me, more broadly, as a teacher, it's health and education. They're those critical foundations, and I think we have to try and drive those housing challenges. I think that is something that does sit across a lot of communities, whether you're in Braidwood or you're in here. that might be working with local governments on housing affordability strategies, and then trying to get resources to feed some of those housing affordability strategies. A very passionate education and improvement take as well.
I think I'd say immediate and real action on climate change, an injection into public funding of publicly owned things like education, affordable housing, and health, really essentially, keeping it in the public hands, and strengthening local government, whether that be moving towards demerger or what, but properly funding local government so that it can operate.
Thanks for the question, Louise. And I've had a great deal of time and opportunity to think about the question that you've asked in the 4 months that I've been spending out there and about in the communities. And the first thing that I'll say is that it's not about my priorities. It's not about what I think we should have happen and my ideology and what I'd like to see happen. It's listening and hearing from the residents who live in this electorate. What are their priorities? What do they want to see delivered? What do they want to see into the future? That's what I'm about. That's what a true representative is about. It's not about promoting oneself, promoting one's party. It's being part of a community and knowing what matters to them. And I can tell you that on the top 3 in my list, from being able to listen and have conversations with our communities out there, many people, regardless of what your politics might be, will absolutely acknowledge that John Barilaro, in his 10 years stewardship of Monero, has delivered a great deal to all of the communities across the board. I don't think there's anyone who can deny otherwise. There have been many commitments made as well. I don't think John was planning to go when he did. You all know some of the circumstances around that and how much stress and pressure that all people who put that sort of hat on go into, but dealing with that as well. So there are numerous commitments that have been made that the community have loudly and clearly told me they want to make sure that they see delivered, and that's what I'm about, seeing them through to their fruition. The second is continuing to assist our small businesses on the emergence and recovery from our lockdowns, from 2 years of disrupted business, social lives, the mental anxiety, the stress that it's caused, and not just small businesses of course, but it's like people generally, particularly our young people, getting all of that back on track to make sure that we safely and soundly recover and we learn the lessons that we need to learn from this pandemic going into the future, and how we are going to continue to address the challenges that will still present themselves to us as we go on. And thirdly and finally, the one that we have talked about tonight in depth, but the housing affordability and availability. That's always been in my top 3 as it is.
I was going to say we're heading to a close, but Tony wants to ask a question.
Well, I just want to, I want to enlarge on that. I just want to enlarge on priorities. I have seen priorities in this town slip away. You brag about Barilaro and his money that he spent on very small sectors of this community, with the ski jump, with the cycle tracks, which are great for small business. I'm not saying they're not. Well, I don't know about the ski jump, because honestly, it's such a small amount of people in the community. They're going to benefit from that. If you're looking at priorities, and surely infrastructure and supporting small governments to be able to afford to put infrastructure into this community has got to be a top priority. So I just want to bring that up so that you're answering the question of our newly elected mayor. But sorry, she's not. That's sorry. But to me, I'm asking the question: when this SAP comes through, are we going to see prioritising to the people who live here, the people who need infrastructure, not just about development?
What I may do is ask the candidates to answer that question as part of their wrap-up.
Yep.
So what we'll do now is every candidate will have 60 to 120 seconds, 1 or 2 minutes, just to round up their perspective on Jindabyne and why you would want us to vote for you. And I'll go in backwards order if that's all right. You're the last one, you can be the first one.
Yeah, I think that the issues that face people in Jindabyne are very similar to the issues that face people across Monero and across the country. And I couldn't help feeling that the comment by Nicole then about it's about what you say, it's not about ideology, was a bit of a dig. Because what I said was what people have said to me. Maybe people say different things to Nicole because she's from a party that has very different policies to the Greens. And I would encourage you, as you look at who to vote, if you haven't already, to really investigate what the Greens stand for, because if you listen to the Murdoch media, you'll have a really warped idea about what we stand for. Murdoch's on record as saying we can't let the bloody Greens destroy it all, and Miranda Devine saying if the Greens say it's a good idea, it's not. And consequently all their media has been to discredit us for decades. Nicole has done a really good job. She's really good at articulating what is happening with her government over this time. But I want to bring up the Auditor General report, which came out today. It described the New South Wales grant scheme as deficient and lacking integrity. And it pointed out that 96% of the $250 million fund went to coalition seats. And that was overseen mainly by John Barilaro. Now, yes, we've probably benefited in Monero from that, but is that a fair way to do it? I think politics needs to be fair. It needs to be distributing things equitably. The Liberal philosophy is not about the greater good. In my experience on council and over many years of campaigning, it's about supporting vested interests. And there's no better illustration of that than what I mentioned before about the 114 new coal, oil and gas projects that the LNP is supporting. And even though that might be a federal support, the LNP is in government here too. And I would say to you, Bryce has already mentioned that a by-election isn't going to change the government, but it is a way of sending a message. And if you are concerned about some of the things that have and haven't been done over the time that this government has been in, then I would really encourage you to send a message by voting differently this time. Have a look at the policies of the people who are standing. If you care about looking after people and the earth, I don't care who does it. If the Liberal Party takes that on and does it, that's great, as long as it happens.
Thank you. Look, I became a teacher and I joined the Labor Party to make a difference. It's basic as that. You know, I joined the Labor Party in Wagga Wagga in 2004. Newsflash, you don't join the Labor Party in Wagga Wagga if you think it's all about political representation. It's about having a go and making a difference. It's a safe area for the Nationals. I love the area, I've raised my family in the area, I'm not moving anywhere, and I really would love to be the member for Monero, and I'm ready to be that. So I ask you to think about that. But I also ask you to think about this. If you're not happy about something, don't vote for this government. They are 11 years into this journey. If you didn't think there was enough business support, when you heard the package announced that you had to have a 40% decline in your takings, and you wouldn't be compensated for January, and you wouldn't get the money until February if it flows through, you're not happy, don't vote for them. If you weren't happy with the mask mandate being lifted, don't vote for them. Because they will take this as the biggest pat on the back they've ever had, and nothing will change. It won't change the government if you vote for Labor, you vote one Labor, it won't change the government, but it will send the message to the government.
I would just say that I'm not bragging about what John Barilaro has done. I'm simply pointing out the facts of some of what has been delivered for the wider area. And that may be the case. I hear what you're saying, but it's all of those small areas, those small groups, those small parts of communities that make a community what it is. And it's looking after each of those small parts that brings communities together. I am about community. That is what my entire professional adult life has been devoted to. That's why I have put myself forward in this regard, because I had someone point out to me earlier this evening that she believed that I cared. I do care. I care deeply. I care deeply about this region, and what I want to do is to continue on the legacy of John Barilaro in terms of being able to provide for our communities and to do even more than that and step beyond that and make my own mark for our communities going forward in the most positive, proactive and progressive way I possibly can. That's why I put my hand up to do this. That's what I am committed to. And it's not just a matter of making a difference. I don't think anybody goes into this type of position or attempts to go into this type of position without wanting to make a difference. I want to do things differently. So what I'm asking you, and I reiterate what has been said here, you're absolutely right. The by-election won't change the government. But what it could change is whether you continue to have a strong voice, someone who will fight for you tooth and nail to make sure that our communities, every small part of our community, is delivered for into the future. And what I ask for you to seriously consider is whether you want to continue to have that strong voice in Parliament as part of the New South Wales government, that I ask for your support to give me that opportunity to show who I am and the representative that I want to be for this place over the next 13 months, and then if I don't deliver, if I don't live up to the things that I've said, you then have the opportunity to revise that decision. But give me a go to show the person that I am.
Thank you very much to the community for coming down to Jindabyne and sharing with us your views and sharing with us what you stand for and introducing yourselves to us a little bit. On behalf of the Jindabyne Chamber of Commerce and the Jindabyne Bowling Club, I'd like to thank everyone for coming down tonight. And what I would like to do is just to show our appreciation to the candidates, please. Good luck with that. Now what I'd like to do is invite you all to stay at the club, get a drink.